along with every living thing on the planet. And now it seems that artificial intelligence, AI, is also establishing its existence alongside us. We're growing, evolving, moving with every second, moulding our own life journey, however long or short it may be. For many, the first parts of our life journey are mapped out in a similar way. Nursery, infant school, junior school, secondary school, further education and university for some, and then our first proper paid job, hopefully. As the seconds, minutes and hours turn into days, months and years, it sometimes feels like it's forever. But as each phase ends, it soon feels like a distant memory. For most people, the daily mundane stuff is filed at the back of the brain. But for most, the memorable bits of the journey can be recalled, whether they be good or bad. Those key incidents in our life journey shape us and influence the path we're taking. We can influence some of them, but more often than not, they will probably be out of our control. On a physical journey, we can look at a map and see the route. In our life journey, we might have a rough idea of where we're heading, but we can't predict the twists, turns and deviations. Throughout our life journey, we'll make countless physical journeys, on foot, wheels, horseback, or maybe trains, planes, boats or buses. But in the future, who knows? We might have journeys in a rocket, or perhaps we won't travel at all. If the climate crisis continues, travel for tourism might be banned. Then what? A virtual journey? Imagine that! The world and even space would be accessible to all without stepping out of our own homes. So today we'll be hearing our creative writing group's interpretations of our chosen theme. To start us off though, here's a poem called Journeys, written using an artificial intelligence site. Now, on Monday we had a reviewer from Buxton Fringe, and I thought just to mix it up a bit, just in case there were some people on Monday night that have come tonight, and for the writers, I thought I'd input it again into a site that Chris had suggested. Because this is what the Buxton Fringe review said. We kicked off with a piece from Simone Hubbard, who included a short poem that had been created by AI on the Journeys theme. Okay, so far so good. This was a decent attempt as it stuck to the brief and even rhymed. But of course it failed deeply as it reflected no lived experience. It was the variety of experiences coupled with the skill and imagination of the other performers that brought their stories and poems to life. So literally about half an hour before I came out, I thought, well, give it another go. So this is its second attempt, and it's called Journeys Echoes, and I just said short poem Journeys. Amidst dawn's golden rays, we set sail. Very applicable. It's as if it's been listening to us all. Yeah. On journeys where destinies prevail. Paths unfurl, a tapestry unknown. Adventure beckons, seeds of growth sown. Through valleys deep and mountains high, in each step a new story to supply. Challenges faced, fears left behind, with courage and hope we redefine. Discovering worlds both near and far, guided by a shimmering star. Infinite roads where memories reside, journeys etched on the heart's map inside. And that was it. I thought, right, I'm going to key in my sequel to my first book and see how it gets on with that.
Wrecked Garden by Julie Harrod. Retirement was just around the corner, so the time seemed right to landscape the garden. Totally. I had this mental picture of my two-tiered garden. The top garden with formal lawn surrounded by paving that wouldn't wobble, and planters. The bottom garden, currently a very overgrown sloping patch of grass rich with weeds, transformed into a patio area and a walled gravel garden. It would be easy to manage, not much grass cutting and weeding, just lots of coffee and relaxing. So I read endless brochures, glossy brochures, visited very impressive websites, and got 3 quotations from local companies. I thought, if the work started in March, I could look forward to this long summer in my dream garden. I found a company that could not only start in March, but also promised a smooth-running 6-week project with minimal mess and disruption. Now, they weren't the cheapest, but dreams don't come cheap, do they? What could go wrong? Reminds me of a plumbing story I went through, right? The start date of March the 6th arrived. The gardening team didn't. Another job apparently had overrun. Well, it must have been quite an overrun because it overrun by 3 weeks. But just as I decided to give up on them and go back to square one, they pitched up. Well, understandably, I'd had to pay for materials in advance. But when the team arrived with, wait for it, 3 shovels and a dilapidated wheelbarrow, I wondered where my money had gone. Oh, all the materials are on their way, I was assured, along with the skip. Well, at least the journey to my dream garden had started. All my cherished planters and statues were placed on the lawn. Well, dumped, actually. I'm not sure what happened to the minimum mess and disruption promise. Okay, breathe. It'll be okay. 1 week in, no sign of anything resembling materials. All the covered paving was removed using the available implements, mainly their shovels and the tools from my shed, and it added to the clutter covering the lawn. I did intend to keep that lawn, I said. Yeah, they said. We're not touching your lawn, really. We're just using it for storage space, love. Breathe, it will grow back. Day 6, grass removed from bottom garden. 4 men drinking copious amounts of tea all day. Well, that must mean progress. Later, I was disappointed to see they'd only just skimmed off the grass. Okay, breathe. They must be digging out for the garden gravel later. And that turf joined the clutter on my lawn. Oh, there's a skip coming soon, love, they said. 6 weeks in, and nearing the completion date, my whole garden consisted of mud, a large central scrapyard, formerly a lawn. Another week passed. An emergency job, apparently, they discovered off. I'm not sure what qualifies as a gardening emergency, but surely my completely wrecked garden must be up there. Okay. Breathe. I returned from shopping one day to find the following in my drive. 5 tons of crushed stone, MOT for those in the know. Did I say it right? A pile of gravel and a skip. All very difficult to get hold of, I was told. What with Brexit and the war in Ukraine, hence the delay. Progress then. But I couldn't get the car on my drive, and there was still no sign of the gardening team to do any work. Progress over the next fortnight was slow because the team only turned up for the odd day. So far, nothing like my dream garden had emerged. I think the time had come to challenge the team and stand my mud-covered ground. I expected a wall to contain the gravel garden, I said, not planks, or there was much teeth sucking. The pressure-treated planks they used would last for years, they said. But they look so ugly, I said. And you know the incline you were going to flatten out? Well, it's still there. Oh, your soil's very dense, love. It's so difficult to flatten out. It's a big problem in the Peak District. Well, who knew that? Those plants will do a great job of holding the gravel, as long as you rake it over a couple of times a week. What? Right. So, I've got no grass to mow, but I've got gravel to rake twice a week instead. I was even considering paint options to make the plants look more aesthetically pleasing. Just breathe. You know, I was assured everything would look fine when it was all finished. The team did return and started to pave the paths. No wobbly slabs, but it was uneven. And some slabs hung so far over the edge that they looked like teeth smiling at me. It's not funny, I said, dodging the mud to perch somewhere with a coffee. Oh God, now I've started talking to paving slabs. This really has to stop. 10 weeks in, I decided I must put a stop to this money hemorrhaging disaster. The gardening team weren't happy, to say the least. My expectations apparently were unrealistic. So I threatened them with trading standards, and I stood my still sloping, mud-covered ground. I wrote off a considerable amount of money and went back to square one. Now, by chance, a friend had told me about a gardener and son team who'd just done this brilliant landscaping job on her mom's garden. No glossy brochure, no website, but I rang the number and asked them to come round. Now, I'd learnt my lesson. I'd be much more assertive this time, and I asked them for a quote for the bottom garden part of the project only. And only if I was happy with that would there be more work. Their quote for that was reasonable. They could start in 3 weeks' time, and then told me the work would take about 2 weeks. I was a bit more clued up now, so I asked if they'd considered the dense soil, how steep the ground can be in the Peak District, and the impact of Brexit and the war in Ukraine on material supplies. They stepped back quickly to make more room between us. Then they smiled and explained that some of the work was weather dependent, so jobs could overrun slightly, but they didn't foresee any other issues. They made a rapid exit. But thankfully they arrived on the agreed start date, 8 o'clock on the dot, with a van full of tools and equipment. Skip, stone, sand, cement had been delivered the day before. Whoa, what was going on? Day one, and my workable dense soil had been dug out. The ugly planks had been discarded, and cement had been prepared for building my wall. My dream gravel garden was on the way. And every day before leaving, they cleaned up and secured the steps so that I could let the dogs out without them getting stuck in wet cement. Now this was a novelty. I had an overwhelming urge to kiss them, but I resisted. I mean, I wanted them to come back, so I made them cups of tea instead. And 3 months later, they'd completed my entire dream garden. They seemed to understand that my initial strange behaviour was just a temporary loss of sanity, so they kept coming back until the project was finished. It was well into winter. Not quite the summer I'd envisioned, but not all journeys go to plan.
Maud and the Whale. There's a virtual resort on Quick Break, Palmjestic, rated highly on space being bored, so Mr. and Mrs. Whitehead logged in with their child person Maud. On went the sensory circuits and leads. The suits came as part of the deal. By the time they'd signed up and downloaded the app, they could have all gone there for real. It was quite an authentic experience all round, too much so for Mother's taste. Strip searched at the spaceport, airsick on the flight, it all seemed a bit of a waste. But when they arrived at the 6-star hotel, things briefly began to improve. The food was divine. Mother tasted the lot, then found that she couldn't move. The feeding IV, set up for comfort to keep them sustained on their trip, had malfunctioned briefly on Mother, requiring the change of a chip. While technicians attended to Mother, Father fancied some water sport fun. He opted to surf with his youngster Maud, so they both ventured out in the sun. The water was well realistic, with waves almost 2 metres high. Maud shouted, "Look, Dad, I'm like up in the air like," and it did seem she'd started to fly. Now Maud was a tech-loving child, liked messaging, WhatsApp and such. So she'd added a phone connect option. With her friends she could now keep in touch. The surfing she soon found boring, no wipeouts, 'twas all very tame. She asked her friend Dell, "What can I do to add some spice to the game?" "There must be a menu of options," said Dell. "Try pressing the pad once or twice." There appeared a long list of extras, most happily in with the price. Well, Maud was amazed. She said, "OMG, there's dolphins, turtles, the lot. You can swim with them all. But which shall I choose?" And that's when it all went to pot. Down slammed her board and her finger slipped. She nearly passed out with a shock. Flailing about, Maud rose up from the sea. She seemed to be beached on a rock. In great consternation, she looked behind, and there was a ruddy great tail. She'd apparently selected an icon, well random, to spend half a day with a whale. Father meanwhile relaxed on the beach. His exertions over for now. He chilled while he could, as when Mother came back, he knew they'd be in for a row. "I want a refund," Mother banged her fist down. To no avail it would seem. Insurance they'd none. T's and C's they'd not read, explained they would not get a beam. Back in the resort, her mood was not helped when Father she couldn't find. Neither offspring nor spouse were around the hotel. They'd gone off and left her behind. She marched down the beach. "Find my family," on scan. She followed the blinking red light. Spotted Father alone, eyes shut, glass in hand. She geared herself up for a fight. "Where's Maud then?" she shouted. His drink nearly fell, and he gestured, resigned, out to sea. "She's surfing out there. It's all very safe. She's much better at it than me." "So why is she not on the screen?" Mother hissed, waving her arm in the air. "She can't come to harm, love, none of it's real," Father sighed, giving in to despair. A whole day went by, and Mother was fraught. Her child was not to be seen. The shops, cafes, theme parks and rides, nowhere could they find the young teen. That evening she stood, all morose by the cakes, when a waiter saw Mother and said, "Are you Mrs. Whitehead? There's a call at the bar. Come this way," and off he led. The robotic voice announced in her ear that Maud had left the resort. "Well, bring her back," Mother shouted, alarmed, but that was not all the report. When hearing the rest, Mother clutched at her chest, and Father ran over to help. "They say that our Maud's been ate by a whale," she gasped, then collapsed with a yelp. Maud had managed somehow, by mistake, to select a different adventure in sight. One where a huge whale would swallow her whole, then she'd have to get out with a fight. She'd used her connect to tell her friend Dell, who'd emailed the company head. He'd asked them to let both her parents both know, just in case they thought she was dead. But that wasn't all that was bothering Ma. No far worse, she had to say.
The adventure Maud picked wasn't part of the deal, and more credits they'd all have to pay. Pay for a whale to swallow my child? What a rip-off! She got to her feet. Father, call up the local network. We'll tell them and arrange to meet. And so they appeared on the late evening news. Mother said it was a disgrace. With her false lashes on, it looked like she'd got 2 tarantulas sat on her face. Father demanded they'd bring his Maud back, or someone would have to pay. They were on an emotional roller coaster, and she'd only been gone a day. Meanwhile, Maud had enjoyed her adventure. She'd passed through most of the whale. She'd learnt a lot of things about the great beast since she'd slid off the end of its tail. Maud selected to end and return herself back. She was feeling relaxed, very happy. That's how they found Maud the very next day, washed up in some fine ambergris. Back together again, the Whiteheads returned to their home, where they'd been all along. The company contacted Mother and said they were sorry about what had gone wrong. They offered the family to make some amends, another big trip for free. But Mother exclaimed, "What? And need more stress counselling? Not really likely, not me." Do you ever do daft things, Doris, like tripping over and hook over nothing?
Oh yes, I do it all the time. Bert used to say, "There must be something wrong with you, Doris." So I told him, yes, there is. And do you know what it is? Old age.
That makes me feel better. My brother John was laughing his head off yesterday about the time I went hurtling down their garden at the summer barbecue.
Not very supportive. I'd forgotten about that. What happened, Ethel?
Well, we just had our sausages and burgers and some charred vegan bliss balls the youngsters brought, and I was ready for something to take the taste of burnt food out of my mouth.
My Bert hated barbecues. He always said we ruined good food. And worse still, our son Ian always gave us endless drinks to stop Bert asking, "When's the food going to be ready?"
I bet you were rat-ass by the time it was ready, because we always were.
That's exactly what happened to me. I'd had my iced sausages and half a bliss ball and decided to go up the garden in search of pudding and some more wine, as if I needed it. On the way back, I went carefully down the patio steps, complete with my bowl of trifle in one hand and a glass of Chardonnay in the other, but obviously not carefully enough. I found myself hurtling sideways down the garden.
I bet you look like a right hyacinth bouquet.
Oh, John said that. I remember picking up speed and wondering how the devil I was going to stop myself falling over.
Did you end up in the bushes?
No, fortunately my niece looked up and saw someone rushing towards her and stuck a chair out to break my fall. Then she took my arm and sat me down.
That was lucky.
Very lucky as it happened. I didn't spill a drop of my wine, and my trifle was also still intact.
Jammy devil, did anybody see you?
Not many, thankfully, so I just sat there, ate my pudding, finished my wine as though nothing had happened.
But that was a trifling incident, Doris, compared with the other eventual journey we had when when Ethel went to Mexico for a few years before. Do you remember going?
I do. Didn't you smash out with your retirement money, Fred?
Yes, it was a trip of a lifetime for him, but I couldn't say it was for me. Fred's always been into cowboy and Indian films, watching them over and over again. So whilst we were there, he booked us on a train journey, like the ones you see in the films, where the cowboys and Indians fight on the train route.
You always were a big kid at heart, Fred.
I suppose I am, really.
Yes, tell me about it.
Well, we're on this rickety train when all of a sudden it stopped in the middle of nowhere. The guard announced that we could get off if we wanted to, but warned us to take great care as there was no platform and below us was a ravine full of boulders.
Like the ones you see in the films?
Exactly like those, just like the ones the cowboys hide behind when they're shooting the baddies. I was nervous about jumping off, but Fred was all for it.
You've never jumped off, Ethel.
Yes, and that wasn't the half of it. Once I had jumped, I couldn't stop. The next thing I know, I was hurtling down the ravine towards the boulders.
How did you stop hurtling?
I was very lucky. Two men saw this daft old bat hurtling towards them and had the good sense to position themselves one either side of me. They grabbed both my arms, which brought me to a grinding halt. I don't mind telling you this, if they hadn't, I can't imagine what would have happened.
And where was Fred when all this was going on?
Well, he was doing what the guard had said, taking his time to get off the train.
And I don't mind telling you, I was working out whether our holiday insurance would cover Ethel's hospital bill if she'd hit one of the boulders.
Well, I say you've been very lucky, Ethel, having 2 eventful journeys without sustaining any injuries.
No, not quite. When I finished my trifle at our John's that day, I stood up to go home, only to find I had an excruciating pain in my right foot.
Oh dear.
It was, oh dear, I'd broken a bone in my foot, so I went to A&E, ended up in a moon boot for 6 weeks.
That reminds me of when me and my Bert went on a cruise to India. When we got to Bombay to his holidays, we chose an organised trip for fear of getting lost there. Our guide was very strict, especially with the authentic train journey bit that we booked on. Watch me and follow my instructions carefully, she said.
And did you?
Oh yes, yeah, watched her like a hawk. It was all about getting the timing right and being... Thank you, Siri. It was all about getting the timing right and being ready to get on and off quickly, as the trains over there only stop at the station for 15 to 20 seconds.
Did you manage okay?
Me and my Bert did, but a woman in the group misjudged it and ended up falling on the platform.
Oh, was she okay?
In a word, no. She was carted off in an ambulance and we'd heard she'd fractured her hip and she had to go to hospital. We never saw her again. I don't know. You've got to laugh, haven't you?
Oh, yes, I've got a limerick for that.
Go on then, Fred, let's hear it.
On a rail and sea cruise holiday, Doris and Bert visit Bombay. As the train moved slowly along the track, a woman fell off and her hip she did crack. Then the ambulance whisked her away.
Oh, very good, Fred, you're getting quite good with your limericks.
Oh, well, we've done some quite epic journeys over the years. Do you remember that holiday in Egypt, Ethel, where we went on a trip to Jerusalem?
Do I? For a start, we had to meet up at 4:30 in the morning outside the hotel.
That was when they gave us a packed lunch, but Ethel, being Ethel, managed to eat it by 5 a.m. I couldn't believe my eyes when I turned round and so there she was, sat on the wall with 2 young men who she'd never met before, all tucking into their lunches like there was they're like school kids having a midnight feast.
Well, it was their idea, and it would have been rude not to join.
So what did you do for your lunch then?
Oh, well, that was when the minibus stopped, wasn't it? Yes. For a comfort break. And Ethel, for two best friends, hopped off and bought some goodies. She also bought a hot chocolate for us each.
Oh, lovely.
Well, it would have been if the driver hadn't set off like Lewis Hamilton and started the Grand Prix.
Oh dear, I fear this didn't end well.
You guessed it. I haven't sat down yet, so there I was, hurtling down the bus. And I toppled over and spilled my hot chocolate all over Fred. Most of it landed on his manhood.
Oh boy, it was hot.
Did it burn you, Fred?
Yes, scorched me crown jewels.
Oh dear. So when you say not half,
He's scarred for life, not that anyone will see that.
Well, I was just about to ask the driver to pass some tissues from the dashboard when he launched into a hard sell about all the things we could buy from him.
Fred kept trying to shut him up.
I was in pain.
and did the driver shut up?
Oh yes, but only when Fred shouted, "Will you shut up, man? We have an emergency back here." I never heard Fred shout like that before. He sounded quite manly, really sexy like Clint Eastwood in Dirty Harry.
I didn't look sexy at all, or manly. And trust me, Ethel, Clint Eastwood would never, ever have gone on a trip with you.
And worse still, Fred had his new beige safari suit on. He had to walk about all day covered in brown sludge. It looked bad enough down the front, but when he stood up and I saw the back of his trousers, well...
Map of Australia.
Oh, Ethel, you have to admit you are a bit of a nightmare.
Oh, I am. At least we can look back and have a good laugh about it.
Well, speak for yourself. The driver kept offering me toilet stops after that.
Oh, you two, you are a caution. Well, for my next little adventure, I'm going to... Oh no, where was it? Somewhere with East in the name.
The Far East, Doris?
No, it's come back to me now. No, it's just as exotic though. I'm going to Eastbourne. We're sharing coaches.
Well, if there's any place left, I think it would be safer for us to join you. If you don't mind, that is.
Oh, that would be great, Fred. My only worry is whether Eastbourne is ready for Ethel. What do you think, Fred?
I'm not sure. She never changes. As she gets older, she gets dafter.
Yeah, but we wouldn't have her any other way, would we? Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow.
Before you go, Doris, I just have another limerick I made up about us.
Go on then, Fred.
There's Ethel, Doris and Fred. There once was a bird, but he's dead. In the mornings they'd gather for coffee and blather, put the world all to rights, then enough said.
Yeah.